Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about For to Doomsday, written by Terence Dudley and directed by John Black. This is the second story to feature our fifth Doctor, Peter Davison. And I've known this story to be a very unpopular adventure. At best, people just seem to disregard it as just another episode. And at worst, people just did generally not like this one. And yes, I think it has a lot of issues and it has some dull moments. But I think overall, it is a very great story in my opinion. I really had a lot of blast with this. I especially like the setup at the start of the story. After the events of Castrovolva, the Doctor's trying to get Tegan back to Earth in 1981, I think she said. And so they try to land, but they've been set off course onto a spaceship. And these scenes at the start where we see the Doctor and his companions just wandering around the ship, working out what's going on and stuff, reminds me a lot of new Doctor Who, especially the Russell T Davies era. Especially when you see Peter Davison with hands in pockets, just wandering around in the corridors, bravely, almost like egotistically, just going into places. That reminds me a lot of the 10th Doctor, David Tennant. It's a great... It gets you right into the action. There's also some really great sets and effects here, as basically everything is a set, and you can see a lot of budget has gone into this. To the hallway, to the underground, not the underground, we're on about, we're on a spaceship, to the underlayers where we see where basically the medical instance, and they have a forestry, and that looks really cool. And you've got the where the TARDIS lands in like a computer room, and then you also got the basically like where the leaders sit, where the rulers of this colony ship exist. And like I said, this story feels really New Who-ish in my opinion. The Doctor and the team soon discover that this ship has been run by 3 greeny blob people, which they dub frogs, our companions. And their names are, the leader is called Monarch, and he has these 2 characters called Persuasion and Enlightenment, a male and female of the same species. And they explain that they're on a mission onto Earth, and they're going to be, they're going to meet some of their, they come there like once every like 1,000 years, and they pick up a representative of an ethnic group, and to try and make peace with humanity. And it's also here that the Doctor and the crew get introduced to some of the side characters here, as we get a Greek philosopher, a Mayan princess who has taken a vow of silence until she meets her loved one again, I think. An Australian Aborigine, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, who only speaks in native Austria, I believe the language is, I could be completely wrong, and a Chinaman from the days of the samurais and stuff. I can't remember his name, that's really bad, but anyway. And the story mainly focuses on the Greek philosopher character. I can't remember his name. I believe his name is something like Big Mead. But anyway, and the Doctor goes in, and he's treated very with great hospitality from our 3 frog characters, shall we say. But something clearly isn't up. Something clearly is up. The Doctor asks how the human characters are there. Are they held hostage? To which the Greek philosopher says If Monarch hasn't told you, then it's probably best keep quiet about it. And there's slight like sinister just throughout the story, but we also get some great cultural characters, and we get just a really great looking story. I think this is probably, in terms of just pure directing, John Black's best work. Because this is probably him at his best. The sceneries just look fantastic. He really knows how to shoot for Peter Davison, and I really like Davison's really quirky persona on this. Davis brings out a lot of his very unique portrayal to the Doctor compared to Tom Baker and all the previous ones. Davison is very young. He can be a bit naive. He can be a bit, but he's also well educated, and he knows when to be. He knows what to do, and he's kind of always up to mischief. There's some great scenes in which he's talking to Tegan, who's explaining how you're so calm about all this. We need to come up with a plan. This is getting really creepy. We need to get out of here. And the Doctor's just smiling and waving. It's like, these times, it's always nice to be polite, because it helps. It's a great defense mechanism, and it helps me gain time to think. I really like that bit, and it shows why Peter Davison is a very great Doctor, and he's a lot more simplified compared to other Doctors. He's not as eccentric. He's not as I don't want to say over the top, but he's not there as much visual. He doesn't constantly like wave his arms around. Usually does this a lot, or puts his hands in his pockets and lets his words do the talking. The way I would describe the Fifth Doctor is he seems like a upper class school graduate who's just finished school or college or university or whatever. Just finished university, and he's basically like a new lecturer, and he's lecturing his companions. And because he's so young and because he's just come out of university, he also gets a kick of seeing all these wonderful things, and he likes seeing these, likes just explaining stuff to his companions and stuff. And I really like that about Peter Davison. It reminds me a lot of a bigger brother. If previous Doctors have been father figures, grandfather figures, or teacher and student, the Fifth Doctor is the big brother. He is the one that will, if you see him, you trust him to look after you and to take care of you. And I think Peter Davison does a great job at bringing out that into this story. As for the companions in this story, this is where, for a lot of people, it kind of falls flat. The story is always is juggling three companions at once. And though I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, it's clear that the writers didn't know what to do with Nessa and Adric, because they're both very similar characters. Alien characters who are much more intelligent than your average companion, and also despite being aliens and stuff, they're still pretty young and they can get caught up into situations. Really, in this role, I believe that Tegan is the main companion. She is the one that stays with the Doctor most of the time, and she learns with the Doctor about all his planning and setup, and she kind of becomes a prominent role as she learns by the Greek philosopher that everybody on the ship is actually robots, androids, who have given away their flesh and imprinted themselves onto these robots, basically making them immortal. And And Monarch's plan is that he's going to go back, he's going to go to Earth, conquer it, and take the silicon material from the Earth's crust, so he can build a machine which will allow him to travel faster than the speed of light, which will allow him to go back in time to before the Big Bang, to which he believes he will see himself, because he believes he is God. I really liked Monarch up to this point, but I think and I really like the idea of him basically want to conquer Earth just for the silicon, because he just has a passion for science, because you see that throughout the story, and he wants to go back in time to see like the event 1, which is really strange, because event 1 was also a prominent story plot in Castrovalva, the previous story. But when the Greek philosopher states that he thinks he's going to see himself because he believes he is God, that I think kind of loses me a bit. It kind of makes me go, okay, I get he's supposed to be crazy and nuts and careless, but he never came off as insane. And when he says that, it does kind of make him feel a bit more like a mustache twirling villain. Though I don't think it really loses on me too much. But anyway, Tegan, because of this, she gets very panicky because she knows about Earth, and she says that we must warn Earth. In fact, at one point, she actually takes the TARDIS and tries to fly off without the TARDIS team, because the Doctor's trying to come up with a plan, but he's not really coming up with anything, and Tegan's just like rushing out in a panic and a frenzy. With her being stuck in the TARDIS kind of takes her out of the story for the bit, as Tegan Adric and Nessa take the companion roles for the bit. Nessa kind of blends a bit into the background in this story. There's some great moments with her, especially when she figures out about how the sonic screwdriver can mess up with the androids, and she is the first one really to figure out that Monarch has some sort of evil intentions and some sort of strange going on, and she's also the first character to stand up against Monarch, which brings real delight to any Nessa fans, to which I would consider myself a Nessa fan. But the majority of the story, she's kind of taken a backburn to Adric or Tegan's or the Doctor's plot, and I think that's okay. I think that's fair enough. I mean, when you have 4 companions, you do have to suffer with one of them, but as long as it doesn't necessarily hinder on the plot, and I don't think that's the case here. I think Tegan just kind of blends in the background, and she's just really waiting for her time to shine. Now, Adric is the big concern in this. A lot of people don't like the story for the main case of Adric. The story starts off with with Adric being very having a bit of a tantrum because he can't go with the Doctor. Whilst the Doctor tells them to stay in the TARDIS for a bit because it might be dangerous. And when they're talking in the TARDIS with him and the 2 girls, he's a bit misogynist against Tegan. There's a bit where he's like, you women are all the same, and Nessa's like, wait a minute, I'm a woman, and Adric's like, it's different, you're not a woman, you're just a girl, and Nessa's just like, okay. I love Nessa's reaction. She's just like, wow, what a dick. And she just reads her book again. I do actually like that. And this is another story in which Adric kind of sees, kind of works with the villain. A plot element that has been done before with Castrovalva and the State of Decay. Only here, he is actually fooled by Monarch, who tells Adric that they want to go to Earth so they can stop humans from creating war and havoc and destruction as humans are known for causing wars against each other and starvation. If Monarch got his way and turned them all into robots, then basically humans can have peace, they can have prosperity, and to which Adric kind of is like, oh yeah, I do kind of see that. And the story really hinders on Adric falling for the Monarch's plot. And I think actually this is another issue, I think. With Monarch's original plan, his actual plan, compared to this plan that he tells Adric that he wants to basically, kind of overthrow humanity, but in his eyes he believes he's doing the greater good. He believes that he's freeing humans and not enslaving them. Then that just sounds a lot better in terms of a villain plan than what we actually got, and that's another hindrance on the plot. And with Adric basically betraying our TARDIS team, there's even a scene in which Nessa gets the TARDIS key and tries to head back to the TARDIS. This is the scene in which she goes into the TARDIS and flies off with her TARDIS crew, taking her out of the story for a bit. Adric sees her and tries to grab onto her, and it's like, stop it, you're going to ruin everything. Monarch's just trying to help you. And it makes Adric feel really unlikable because of the previous scene inside the TARDIS, and the fact that we've already had a plot very similar to this, to which Adric was basically pretending he was he knew that he was being manipulated, but Adric was basically just pretending to try and gain the bad guy's trust. In that case, it's the vampires, and here it's Monarch, although that doesn't actually happen. And it just just doesn't seem right, and it does feel like the way it's paced, and like I said with the previous adventure, Adric's had this, it does kind of feel like the only reason Adric's really doing this is because he doesn't like Tegan, and is like, Nessun should be suppressed because she might start a war or something, which is pretty ridiculous and pretty naive. Although he did have some trouble with the police in Logopolis and Castrovalva, so I guess you could get away with it there. But Adric overall in this story is very brash. He's naive. He has tantrums. He doesn't really do much for the plot apart from being persuaded by the baddies. Which means that he does become a big part of the story, but it is an issue. So, what do I take from this? I think Adric is an okay character here, but a lot of people didn't like his character in this, and there is a lot of criticisms too with his character. I have as well. But really, to me personally, it just comes off as they need somebody who to basically add the tension, and Adric just got the short end of the stick. And Matthew Waterhouse, he's actually a much better actor here than he is when we first saw him in Full Circle, but still not an amazing, it's still not a great improvement. Later on, the Doctor actually persuades him. I love the scene in which Adric takes the Doctor to see Monarch, and then the Doctor goes into the other room knowing that there's a camera on them, and Adric is talking to the Doctor, trying to persuade him, and the Doctor's like, I know, I'm sorry, I should be much more kinder to Monarch. I will demand that I can go and apologise to him as once. He's trying to give us all everything he wants. You know, he's brilliant, he's kind, he's magnificent. We should go and see him right now. But first, let's go to the entertainment room. And then the Doctor and Adric go to the entertainment room where there's lots of sounds and stuff. So the baddies can't hear them, and he's like, listen to me, Adric, you little shit. I'm gonna you listen up. I only said that before because I knew we were hearing. The baddies, they don't want this. I'm not gonna tell you my plan unless I can persuade you that they are the bad guys and they're all in. I really love that scene, and it's why, despite a lot of people really not liking the story or just think it's pretty bland, I had a lot of fun with it. I also really like some of the scenes in which the Doctor and sometimes Adric and sometimes Tegan, they're watching the entertainment room in which all these cultures basically come up together, group together, and have a little like ceremony where you can see the Mayan ladies dance, or the Romans having a sword fight, and it gives this story a lot of cultural atmosphere. It gives this story feeling like the story is about union and prosperity. As the Doctor teams up with the Greek philosopher who really who knows that Monarch is kind of bad and is basically trying to portray him, and the Doctor tries to convince the other leaders who have human consciousness to work with them and try to overthrow Monarch. And it's also here that we learn that Monarch has a poison. If his plan doesn't work, he's just got a poison which will shrink all of humanity to a size of a grain of salt, to which he can then just wipe them all out. Which I think is a bit of a doom switch cliche, but it works. I think it works. But one of the most memorable scenes in this, which is one of the scenes I really love, in terms of an action-adventure story. I think this is really when John Nathan Turner took on, Doctor Who basically became much more action-orientated. And here is a great example, as after he convinces Adric, he notices that the TARDIS is hovering just outside of space. And so, with the help of Adric, he tries to float through space using space helmet so he can breathe to get to the TARDIS, whilst Adric is using a rope. And despite it clearly being green screen, John Black does a fantastic job of putting a lot of tension and suspense in this scene, as we have Persuasion and Enlightenment, who now have become humanoid figures after Tegan did a sketch and they took the forms of the sketches, replacing their feeble bodies with these cool 80s looking robots, which I really like. We get a scene in which the Doctor is like hovering in space almost to the TARDIS, but Adric keeps getting attacked by Enlightenment and Persuasion, and because they are robots, when Adric shoots his gun, nothing's happening. So at one point the Doctor has to kind of pull himself back really quickly, and all the tension is tampling just to get a piece out of their chests. They're basically the soul of the machine, so then just throw it out into space. And then the Doctor resumes back to try and float into the TARDIS. And there's a great bit in which, I believe it's Persuasion or Enlightenment, I can't remember, the girl one, she basically chucks the rope out after the struggle with Adric, and so the Doctor can't basically pull himself back with the string. So he gets his tennis ball and throws it to the wall of the ship and hits back at him, to which the pressure pushes him closer to the TARDIS, and he grabs onto it. And the way it's shot, the way it's directed, especially when you have the leaders of the ethnic groups cheering the Doctor on, it gives me anyway, when I watch it and the Doctor lands on the TARDIS, you have that, yes, get in there, Doctor, moment, which and it reminds me why I just love Doctor Who so much. Those moments, those action-adventure moments, it reminds me a lot of Star Wars, that scene in which Luke and Leia swing to one side of the room to the other while stormtroopers trying to get through the door. It reminds me a lot of that scene. It's obviously not as good. I mean, we're on a TV budget with clear green screen and you know, the effects are just not as good as Star Wars. But I think it's still, in my opinion anyway, in terms of plot and the acting and what we could do for what they had, does do a great job of getting that yeah moment. So yeah, and so with Monarch now on his own as persuasion and enlightenment are destroyed, he tries to take the TARDIS, or try to throw, I can't remember what he tries to do. If he tries to take the TARDIS or he tries to just, I don't know, I can't remember, but anyway, the Doctor takes his poison and throws it at him, and because the Doctor explains later on that Monarch is actually still part flesh, he was a bit scared of becoming basically completely a robot, so he's still a bit of flesh. Because of that, the poison makes him shrink down to like that size, and the Doctor just puts a helmet on him and stops him. And it's like, hooray, everyone's free and stuff. And these robot characters, the robot humanoids are like, we're not going to travel back to Earth. There's nothing there for us as immortal robots. So we're going to find a new planet which we could call home. And then our TARDIS team leaves, and that's the end of the story. So, oh wait, before the end of the story, we see our characters in the TARDIS, happily, cheerful, and then suddenly Nessa calls out for the Doctor and she collapses, leaving the story on a cliffhanger, leading on to the next adventure. So there you go, that's for Doomsday. Overall, I can see it has a lot of issues. Adric isn't very likeable. Tegan might not get a lot to do. And maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a bit slow, though I personally think with this kind of plot and these characters, I think the slower pace actually really helps it. But I personally had a lot of fun with this. I really enjoyed it, and it shows why Peter Davison is just a fantastic Doctor. I highly recommend it, though again, I must state that it's not a very particularly popular story, and if you might hear that some people don't like it, and I think that's completely fair, but I personally just really enjoyed it. So there you go, that's for Doomsday. So join me next time where we get introduced to one of the Fifth Doctor's greatest returning villains, a giant dynamic snake thing. So join me next time for Kinder. See you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!